Hey guys, this is new for me, but I thought I would try to do it in a video format. So, Frank Lampard left Chelsea today, and with his departure, comes analysis of his tenure at Chelsea. And the reason I'm making this is because of a friend of mine who expressed confusion about this graph in front of me. So I thought I'd try to break it down and explain it. So, if we take a look at the graph, we have four different Chelsea managers. I think the previous four: Jose Mourinho, Antonio Conte, Maurizio Sarri, and Frank Lampard. The blue line on the top usually denotes the 10-game rolling average of expected goals for, and the yellow on the bottom usually denotes the 10-game rolling average of expected goals against. And obviously the difference is coloured in so that it's better visualise the difference between the for and against column. So if we take a look at Jose Mourinho, for example, his expected goals for at the start of his tenure, or this second spell in charge of Chelsea, is up around 2.5, and then it starts dropping off. And just as it starts dropping off, the expected goals against starts rising as well, and at one point the expected goals against even overtakes the expected goals for. They're a very small moment, and then as Mourinho tries to sort that out, it goes back to normal. This might be down to variance of some kind, which I'll come on to, and then sort of resets, and then they move on to Antonio Conte, and it continues to rise, and then etc. etc. I think this moment in Antonio Conte's career is the title win, I imagine, because it looks very dominant. There is a big gap between expected goals for and expected goals against. And then, of course, later that changes to Sarri, and again, he starts off well, etc., etc. So the colours visualise the difference between expected goals for and against. What confused my friend was that it made Chelsea look like they never lose on XG, or they hardly ever lose games on the XG. They don't lose sort of 2.4 XG and only score 0.9 XG. They seem to never do that. The confusion there, the flaw in that logic there, is forgetting that it's a 10-game rolling average. So if I move over to my other screen, you'll see I've got game week plotted out on the left column. I've got expected goals for. This is just made up numbers, don't worry about it. And expected goals against going down. And we've got 11 games or 11 game weeks. So what a 10-game rolling average does is it takes the average, as you might expect, for 10 games, and we plot that on the chart. So on my example, the average for game week 1 to game week 10 is 1.56 for expected goals for, and 1.10 for expected goals against. And then what it does after that is you have a new game, which means you have a new set of XG numbers to add. And what you do is you remove the first one. So if I go to my Excel spreadsheet, what you'll see is that these two cells here, they average out these first 10 games. And then these games, they remove the first one. So let's just black that out. And then you take an average from the next 10. And it continues like that. So if we head back on over to the rolling averages, like so, you'll see on Frank Lampard's chart, for example, it moves up and down and up and down and up and down. And so these are all the averages. So because it's an average, you might play 7 games where you score a higher XG than your opponent. But in the other 3 games, no matter where they are, those other 3, you're conceding more XG than your opponent. But on average, that will make it look like your XG for is higher than your XG against. So that's what's going on here. So Frank Lampard, over his career with Chelsea, over 10 games, never had an expected goals against that went above. That doesn't mean he didn't lose a game on XG at any point in his career, and some of these gaps where it comes down and goes up somewhere else will probably reflect 2 or 3 games maybe where that does happen. Just to comment on Frank Lampard as we're looking at him. At the start of his career with Chelsea, it was all looking good. So I think probably around halfway on this table or on this graph is sort of his first season and then his second season, maybe around here. And what you'll see is that his XG4 is really good. There was a little bit of a wobble in the middle, so just here his attack comes down, but at the same time his defense is also coming down, so he probably still had good results. But he was at this stage, it appears he had a struggle, and then it got better again. But recently, and this is where the Chelsea's form has dropped off, they've started to concede more goals again, or more chances, and the amount of chances they're creating is also coming down. And you don't want the amount of chances you're conceding to ever be above the amount of chances you're creating, obviously. And Chelsea, I don't know how good their analytics department is, but they're probably looking at the numbers and noticing a dwindling in both areas, and they've decided to call quits early, and there'll definitely be a lot of backroom stuff going on as well.